The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome in to the post-Alabama Speed Weeks edition of Crossed Flags. Appreciate you joining us. I'm Steve West alongside Matt Nicholson. Appreciate producer John and producer Molly getting everything taken care of us when it comes to everything and getting us up online on CRN Live on YouTube and, of course, Jocks TV as well. Plenty to get to, and we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to end up having to try and cover from the last couple of weeks this weekend on the big show. But we want to give you two things mainly. You can see the two logos right down there at the bottom of the screen, NASCAR and the IHRA. And this will be a first for Crossed Flags. We haven't talked about the IHRA, I don't think, on Crossed Flags before. I wish I could say it was better news than what it is. We'll get to that in a minute. A couple of things about NASCAR real quick. Ben Kennedy started to take control of the scheduling situation for NASCAR. We could complain, but the truth of the matter is now that we brought Rockingham back and North Wilkesboro back, I don't know as we've got a whole lot to complain about. Do we, Matt?
No, I have no complaints.
Okay. You and I have also been lucky enough, blessed enough, if you will, to be able to go and be part of the 2019 championship weekend, which was the final championship weekend. At least we thought it was, at Homestead, Miami. Ben Kennedy announced today that next year, it is official, they are taking the championship race back to Homestead, Miami, and that's going to begin a rotation of sorts. But he didn't really clarify what that rotation would be other than Homestead and Phoenix. In the interview that he has done, in the press conference that he has done, he wasn't going to rule anything out, he said. He said just because those two tracks are owned by NASCAR, ISC, he's not necessarily going to rule out the idea that an SMI track could get it. And we've seen this before. Atlanta used to host the championship weekend way back 25 years ago. So It's not unprecedented. Las Vegas, you and I have talked about this as a possibility. Texas, it is a controversial track, but weather-wise, it fits the bill. If you want to get a little cooler, you could talk Kansas, you could talk Charlotte. I doubt you and I have talked about Darlington in the fact that, if you were going to put Charlotte in there geographically, Darlington would work. Not really so certain that they would put it at Darlington, considering Southern 500 and Labor Day weekend. Seems a little bit too quick on the turnaround. And I'm not sure I would put it at a track too much smaller, truth be told, than a Charlotte or Darlington. Darlington's 1 1/3 miles. That would fit Rockingham, which is independently owned. Maybe you could go there?
Possibly, yeah. But it was in one of the media releases that I read on just a little while earlier. They Ben Kennedy said the focus will be a rotation of short tracks and intermediates, and would not go to a super speedway style event, which immediately lost some credibility with me. Here's why: because all the years that the regular season championship has ended at Daytona.
Right. Well, and I can understand that he wouldn't want to necessarily take that away from Daytona, but that also eliminates Talladega.
Yeah,
that's a bit of a bother.
It's a simple fact. It's a simple fact of a super speedway format.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, not focusing on super speedways, does it eliminate Atlanta as well? I think it's unfair to it. I think it's unfair to eliminate Atlanta.
I think so too, because you and I have talked about this, and watching the racing since the repave, it's certainly the first year, maybe first 2, maybe 3 races certainly deserve to have the super speedway package. But now that it's got a couple of years on it, it's aged a little bit. It does seem to be coming back more to that intermediate track kind of racing style that we are generally seeing at a Charlotte or a Texas or a Las Vegas or Kansas, wherever.
It's not there yet, but it's progressing there.
Yeah, it's getting there
Wow.
much faster. And if you give it a couple more years, so let's just say you want to put it in the rotation, put it in the rotation third. You know, you're going to go Homestead, Miami, then go back to Phoenix. So Homestead, Miami's 2026. Take it back to Phoenix in 2027, then put it at Atlanta. That
I
gives it
don't think
3 more years of aging.
I don't think you need to. I don't think it needs to go immediately back to Phoenix right after Homestead, because
Well,
that's gonna paint the picture and paint the narrative of, oh, they didn't like Homestead, so they sent it back to Phoenix. You
yeah.
don't want to do that.
No.
You do an equal Final Four style rotation of championship sides. Make it equal.
Okay.
Now, say if you go with 8 tracks, if you go
Okay.
with Homestead, Phoenix, Vegas, Texas, Charlotte, Kansas, Bristol, and Atlanta. Let's put
Okay.
Atlanta in there.
Okay.
All right.
So
You
you wanna
don't go
keep
back to Phoenix until after you go back out of Atlanta.
True. Yeah,
You
I
rotate them
understand
equal.
that.
You rotate them equally, and whichever track rotates into the championship race, the track that from that the race from that previous year's championship race automatically goes to that respective date.
Yeah, I can agree with that. But again, okay, let's just look at it from another angle then. If you decide that you want to go to Atlanta, all right, you're going to take it Homestead, Miami in 2026. That's already added another year. If you want to add another year on it, go ahead and wait until 2027. Take it to Atlanta 2027 at the earliest. That's 2 more years of aging on that. And like you
Careless,
said, you and I watching this, we've seen it progress. We know that the racing is returning to a normal, but it is a track that has its own personality with the much higher banking than what we see at the Texases and the Vegases and the Charlottes and all those. So yeah, it's what we used to call the cookie cutter 1.5 mile track, but it's not really cookie cutter.
no, not really.
So yeah, I have no problem with them putting it in Atlanta. Um, Again, eliminating totally Talladega just out of hand, I'm not so certain that I agree with that 100%. But at the same time, I'm not so certain that the drivers would be all that thrilled about wrapping it up and putting a championship at Talladega, where
What's
it is such a
the
massive wild card.
what's the difference in being at Talladega versus the regular season championship ending at Daytona?
And I fully understand that. And truth be told, I think I would love it. I know, well, I take that back. I know I would love it. I know you would too. And I know that the fans would, but
Yeah.
I think the drivers would. And whether or not that concern holds any water, I think the drivers would not be all that happy about it.
Well, as tame as the Jack Links 500 was a couple weeks ago, I why would anybody have any reservations? Because that was one of the more tamer super speedway races I've seen in a very long time.
Oh yeah.
Tame.
Yeah, because I have to admit, I was thinking about that going into Talladega weekend. And I was there in 2001 when they had that post Dale Earnhardt senior crash race at Talladega, and it went caution free. And I know you were there too. They can behave themselves at Talladega. And here's the thing. This is the spring race at Talladega. Can we really expect that in the fall when we're in the middle race in the round of 8? There's more on the line there, if you know what I mean. Can we really expect them to be that tame in the fall? And then when you turn
No.
around and you throw that Cup Series championship trophy on the line, can you really expect them to be that tame?
No, you would see 4 wide coming to the line.
And at that point in time, you got to figure out, okay, I'm gonna put you in 2 drivers situations. You come in, you're one of the championship 4. You happen to be 4th in line. The other 3 competitors are ahead of you. How clean are you going to be?
That scenario, are we single file four-way breakaway, or are we 4 wide?
I'll put you like we were at the Jack Links 500 coming down to the end, 2 wide.
2 wide.
You're second in line on the outside. Actually, no, I'm going to put you second in line on the inside. How's
Second in
that?
line on the inside. One, it's gonna what move I make is gonna depend on who I've got behind me and pushing me. Because if I make an aggressive move, I've got to know if that person, if I decide to make an aggressive move, I got to know if that person's going to go with me or if they're going to bail with me and lock into the car that I was pushing and hang me out to dry.
Okay.
It's playing chess.
I'll give you the choice of which of the 3 car makers you're driving for. I'm not going to give you the team choice. I'm just going to give you your choice of car make. Which of the 3?
Considering that this manufacturer is both of our daily drivers, I'll go Toyota.
Okay. Let's assume that it's a Chevrolet behind you.
Question. All right. My next question is who am I pushing? Am I pushing a Chevrolet or a Ford up front?
I'll say you're pushing a Ford. I'm going to put all 3 of them right there in a row.
Knowing I'm pushing a Ford and I've got a Chevrolet pushing me, I've got to see who it is on the Chevrolet to know if I'm going to trust them to make a move.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing the fact that I'm going to be no worse than 4th in the championship, I'm going for it.
Yeah. I mean, you're that
What do you
close.
got to lose? You're going for it.
Okay. Now I'm going to put you in 2 other scenarios, one behind the wheel. You're not in the championship 4.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in that Chevrolet that I was talking about beforehand. You do have a half decent chance of actually maybe winning this race if you make the right move at the right time. But how unwilling are you to put yourself in the middle of those 4 championship drivers there?
I'm going to go on the old school, what's called the old school gentleman's agreement. And I'm going to just do what I call float. I'm not going to hamper if the front 2 cars are sitting in the top 4 in the championship. I'm not going to make a move to where I put them in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to sit and float in whichever line's got the momentum and gains the momentum. That's where I'm going to keep my momentum.
Okay.
That's where I would go.
So
But
you're willing to play hands off in this case for the
I'm willing to play hands
off.
off. But if there's so much of a fraction of a window that opens up that I see that I can take and go win the race, I'm going to take it.
Okay. Now, final scenario, I'm going to put you in the place of a NASCAR official. And let's assume that this situation comes down and that driver on the inside in row number 2, who's in 4th place in the championship, gets a little rowdy and happens to do something that might on the surface seem innocent, but you could question the motivation of it because of the trophy being on the line. In other words, bump draft down the Alabama gang super stretch, and that car in front of him goes down to the inside and into the inside wall. Do you penalize that person? See, we start to think about all these different possibilities and these options, and we begin to wonder, what can we chalk up to a racing incident, and what can we go, you know what, can't do it. I can't give you the trophy.
You can't in that matter. You gotta last lap. You gotta let everything play out on the track, and just as it is as it is.
So
it's got to, because you can with how you can visualize how a car shoves another car.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use it how you visualize it. That visual will let you know in the determination if that was a move of malice or a move of intent.
Okay. If you honestly feel like you can determine that it was a move of malice, what are you going to do?
I don't think that there's going to be a situation that it would be a move of malice, because I don't think anybody has got a brain cell that's small enough that runs a super speedway like that to deliberately take somebody out of the super speedway because you got so, from a physical standpoint, physical from the physicality of the driver. Let's use that.
Okay.
Man or woman holding the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
From the physicality of it to the outcome of who may be collected in what you do. There's too much at stake. Because if I'm in a situation where like last year when Eric Jones was getting pushed, and it was a move of non-malice, a clear move of non-malice.
I agree.
It was an ill-timed push, and next thing you know, he's out 2 weeks because he injured his back.
Because
the cars are tanked?
Okay, what if it's an Austin Dillon into Eric Almirola Daytona 500 like thing? Because you and I were both highly critical of that when it happened.
Yeah. That's going to be hard. It's hard to say. It is really hard to say. But if you was to make the judgment of that would be a move of malice and clear intent to take him out of there, you better be prepared in massive proportions to face backlash like it's never been faced before if you determine that was a move of malice and you take the championship away and disqualify that car.
And that's why I tend to think that they probably won't take it to a Talladega. Again, as much as you and I would like it, and I think the fans would, I think NASCAR's looking at it and going, wow, there's too many possibilities for us to, take open the Costco-sized can of worms, the 55-gallon drum can of worms, and just pop it open with an M80 and worms go everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think that they'll take it to a Talladega. I know they won't take it to a road course. They're just not bold enough to do that. They're not going to take it to a road course.
The only road course that you would have that would be in any qualification to do that would be COTA.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
COTA, because the weather with Watkins Glen, New York in November, that would be brutally cold.
I'd have to look at Sonoma.
California, the rain would be a question.
Yeah. And that is rainy season for a fairly dry state, but you got to remember they're in the northern part of the state. It's not like Los Angeles. So, yeah, COTA, I think, is probably your one and only option. I certainly wouldn't put it at the Roval over Charlotte as an oval. I think it would be a much better race with Charlotte as an oval like we're going to see in a couple of weeks at the Coca-Cola 600. So that, at least we know that they've got this beginning. We'll find out who all's in the rotation. I think this is a good move. The NFL does this with the Super Bowl and going to several different neutral sites, if you will. I mean, Major League Baseball, the NHL, NBA, they all do home and home, and that's fine. You can do that over a 7-game set. When you're talking about a single day, one-time event, I think being able to take it to different places and put it in different cities, especially if that city or those cities, say that specifically, because if we take it to Texas, you got Dallas and Fort Worth right there practically side by side. You get that city or those cities that can come together and they can really play it up both outside of that particular city, but inside it as well, because you want a good representation of fans from your own home market being able to come to this race.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I mean, with Texas, I was pleasantly surprised to see the level of the crowd at Texas because it's been so low these past few years.
Agreed.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Which that's a good thing. Good for Texas.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be a sellout and then they fell way off. Now they seem to be kind of coming back a little bit. And I think it does help that even though they've messed with the track and it's, one level in turns 1 and 2 and another degree of banking in turns 3 and 4, and they kind of messed with it a whole lot. I think the fans specifically are realizing that it's that intermediate kind of track that has produced so far the best racing that we have seen out of this Gen 7 car.
For this year, yes.
Yeah, and I might
For
even
this year.
include last year in that. I mean, we've seen it develop over the last couple of years, I guess is probably maybe the best way to say that.
Kansas will tell the tale this weekend.
I agree wholeheartedly. The other side of this is the fact that once we get past Kansas this weekend, we go to North Wilkesboro and we go there for the All-Star race for the Cup Series. NASCAR, we started hearing about this at Talladega in that they were talking about this idea of run what you brung. And I use those air bunnies very, very purposely because we were kind of curious when we heard that phrase. What exactly did NASCAR mean?
That's exactly what I said. Define that.
Yes. And you and I are both pretty much of the same mind. Denny Hamlin, who not only drives for Joe Gibbs Racing, obviously, but he's a co-team owner with Michael Jordan on 2311. He had the chance to look into this a little bit more, and you heard a lot more about it. So I'm going to let you take the floor on this and kind of
Yeah,
explain that whole thing.
he basically he stated on his podcast platform, Actions Detrimental, that it would cost their respective team upwards of $2 million. $2 million from the simple fact of that they would be modifying the car to the point that where the car would not be usable anymore in a regular race.
Sure.
Well, this little Holler Talk podcast, which now that I know and I see who is the lead of that, I've got to question that because the two ones that lead it, Mike Forty and Amanda Ellis, they are the communications director on the media side.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It would be different if you had actual officials that were in the garage looking and watching at cars being teched. I'm gonna use a couple of names: Joey Aycock, Shannon Bednarik, Rich Keeter, Mike Phillips, David Green. That name ring a bell?
Mm-hmm.
Names like that. There would be some more credibility to this for me, and just in my opinion.
Okay.
But and this is reading an article from Sporting News that Matt Weaver put out. Ford said on the podcast that NASCAR would not have allowed the teams to bend, break, or otherwise modify the single source supply of parts. Okay, stop right there. That automatically eliminates run what you run.
Sure.
I can see where Denny was coming with that number because you're factoring in everything that you're going to get to trick up, and let's use the term trick up. The suspension, the body, aerodynamic stuff, whatnot. And I dare say he was probably factoring in doing something with an engine.
Now, I'd almost guarantee that.
Where they come in with this at to the time of the race, you're going to not have enough time to develop a 670 horsepower motor into 850 or 900 that quick. You're going to have to do a lot of reworking to make sure your parameters of what you got on engine size, on the size of your block and size of your cylinder heads, you got to make sure those parameters match up to where you don't grenade an engine lap one going down the backstretch at Wilkesboro.
Right.
When it hits high RPM. You can't do that. So he says, what we presented to the team is that you cannot modify any parts. You cannot build any new parts. You cannot create any new parts. Everything still had to be single sourced. Again, stop right there. That is not a run what you brung race.
Your run what you brung is now out the door. You're correct.
You're completely out the door.
And you've heard this just as well as I have. There are drivers and there have been team owners in all three of the top NASCAR series who have said, we need NASCAR to create these rules and these parameters to save us from ourselves. Because if it was a true run what you brung race, there is at least one team out there, and I'm not going to name names because truth be told, I don't know. But some team out there would say, this is a primetime opportunity for us to get into victory lane, we think. And they're going to go all out, throw everything up against the wall, and see what they can come up with, all in an attempt to win a cash grab race.
That and then some, because you would have somebody, because he said too, on a normal race, when we unload a car off of the lift gate at a track, that is $300,000 right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which I literally choked on the bottle of water that I was drinking because I can recall it being said Gen 6 cars, Gen 6 and Gen 5 cars, you were $125,000 to $175,000.
Sure.
Which is not far from being right.
Right.
But $300,000, that's yeah.
And I thought this car was supposed to save us money.
Yeah, what happened to saving money? Yeah, right. But there was a list of the things that we were going to allow the teams to do. The teams could choose their own ride heights. The damper links would not be enforced. Customizable nose weight. Choice of circle track, road course, or intermediate super speedway diffusers.
Which you're at North Wilkesboro, so which one are you choosing?
The short track, which is none.
Okay.
It's no diffuser.
Right. Okay.
Any spoiler and spoiler base from the current inventory available for use, and a minimum weight will be enforced. So the question was asked, why does he believe that this cost the teams nothing? He says, and quote, in part two about this, and why I say this could actually probably save the teams money on this idea, is if you didn't want to do anything, and if you did not want to come up with any idea, you can just build your cars. And what you could have done is use body panels that probably aren't race ready for a Talladega or a Coke 600, but probably too good for a show car, and use it for the All-Star race.
Okay, I follow.
Those are single source parts as well.
True, they are.
So this notion of a run what you brung, but you're only limited to that. I can see why the team said,
yeah. If you had visions in your mind of Smokey Yunick, keep dreaming. It's not that way. It's not
because
Junior Johnson
in today's era, with the era of the past crew chiefs, if you had the ones like Smokey Yunick, Harry Hyde, Jake Elder, Waddell Wilson, Dale Inman, names like that.
Yeah.
And Jeff Hammond, I mean, in the heyday of working with Junior Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Reading my mind on that one too.
Ooh, let them get their hands on this car and say, what can we do here?
Heck yeah.
Kirk Shelmerdine.
I get a kick out of this because I usually get to listen to them every Sunday morning as I'm going from home to church. I usually leave at about the time when on Sirius XM satellite radio, Pat Patterson, who does turn work for PRN, has a Sunday morning show called The Front Stretch. And usually he gets Jeff Hammond on right about the halfway point of when I'm driving to church. And I have heard him on more than one occasion talking about getting his hands on this Gen 7 car. And I was thinking exactly like you were. What would he try to do, considering what he was able to accomplish back then and actually got away with? What could he try to do with this car?
Give me in their heyday, give me Dale, Jeff Hammond, Ray Evernham, Jack Knaus, and Waddell Wilson. Give me five. Let's word it, of the lower budgeted teams.
Okay.
That's going to give me right there. That's going to give me BJ McLeod. That's going to give me in New York NY Racing, the 44 car.
Yes, it would.
Give me Carl Long's car. Give me
Rick Ware.
Let's say both Rick Ware cars. Let's throw 2 of them in there.
All right.
No holds barred with those 5 cars, and I guarantee you pair those 5 crew chiefs up on those 5 cars respectively.
In their heyday, yeah,
they would lap the field, have the field lapped by lap 50 of the All-Star race.
I think you're right. You want a true run what you brung, you got to go back to that time.
You got to
can't go by these rules.
Go to that era right there, and then like when Darrell Walter was on Dale Jr.'s podcast that time, talking about how they used to have little wrenches and dump the lead shot in the corner of the car, and shed weight off the car.
And brainy enough to make the exit where they would put the jack to jack the car up to do the inspection. I mean, think about that for a moment. They didn't.
Yeah, removable jack stand with threads on it at a point.
Exactly. So, yeah, this isn't run what you brung, and no, it's not going to happen.
No.
So they're going to run with the regular rules. And that brings us to our third subject here. And I admit, very surprised by this. But early this year, we decided to start covering the IHRA, the International Hot Rod Association. And the main reason why is because we found where a very notable name from the National Hot Rod Association, the NHRA, decided to change over. Alan Reinhart. Alan Reinhart, 25 to 30 years working with the NHRA, probably best known to most people as doing their play-by-play action.
At least, yes. At
least.
Least.
Among other things. But for the most part, that's what people know him as. He flips over. He becomes a big wig within the IHRA as they state that their intent with their new owner, Daryl Cuttle, is to put themselves back on fighting stance and try and compete with the NHRA, which is the big dog in the room when it comes to drag racing in the United States of America. That didn't last long. 4 days ago, this is Tuesday as we record this, so Saturday, Alan Reinhart has this post, and I'm going to read it so I make sure I get it right. As most have heard by now, I parted ways with the IHRA last week. No bad blood on my part. Sometimes things just don't work out as you hope that they would. What's next? Stay tuned. At this point in time, he has no update on what's next for him. I'd be shocked if the NHRA didn't try and pull him back, but that's another story entirely. We will continue. Yeah. I'll state this right now. We will continue to follow the IHRA because, again, they're still making those moves towards trying to put themselves on that footing. But I asked this question a couple of weeks ago, and I believe I asked it on the big show because I'm fairly certain it wasn't here. In whether or not you felt like the IHRA was biting off more than they could chew. And then this happens, and it makes me ask that question again. Is Daryl Cuttle, in charge of the IHRA, biting off more than he can chew? And that caused Alan Reinhart to go, you know what? I don't want to see this.
It's hard to say because the moves that have been made so far, getting things in position and getting them ready to go, has been the right moves.
Agreed.
I mean, I'm looking very forward to when the World Finals comes to our backyard here in October.
Sure. The reason I asked this, and I'll state this up front, is because one of the last shows that we did, I think it was 2 before we went to Talladega. Not the weekend before, but the weekend before that, we went to Talladega. It's 2 weeks before Talladega. I noted that the IHRA had gone into the agreement with 7 different facilities in 3 different states, saying they were going to buy them. And you and I well know that whether or not it is an ISC SMI track or some mom and pop owned drag strip that's out in the middle of the woods somewhere, to purchase an IHRA/NHRA ready facility is not gonna be cheap. And he's gone on a buying spree.
Not cheap at all. Not cheap at all.
Okay,
I mean,
and that
because
was go ahead.
their nitro events are more in the Midwest, and their finals are going to be in Darlington.
Mm-hmm.
The Nitro finals are going to be in Darlington, which now I see that is kind of just. I wish the Nitro finals would be in Steele at Alabama International.
Wouldn't that be great?
That'd be outstanding. But when the season gets off and running in their first scheduled event in June,
mm-hmm.
when it gets off and running and we see how it develops, that's going to tell how everything develops and how the flow of the events go. That's going to tell me if Daryl Cuttle bit off more than he could chew.
Okay. So right now, you're willing to chalk this up to something akin to Rodney Childers leaving Spire. It was more personality issues that they kind of clashed, and he said, I
from what it sounds like to me, yeah.
Okay. All right. And again, we're going to keep up on this because I do find it interesting that they made this big splash, that Daryl Cuttle was willing to make this big splash. Alan Reinhart was willing to go with him, at least at the beginning. And for whatever reason, he may talk about it at some point in time later. He may not. I don't know. But for a while there, they were on the same page, and Daryl at least is still continuing down this road of trying to make the IHRA less of that second-class citizen who has to sit way back in the back row and more along the lines of being up there with the NHRA. So we're going to keep up with it. There's no doubt about it. We'll keep it on the big show until such a time as we don't think that it deserves to be there. And we haven't cut one yet, but be more than willing to cut a series if that particular series isn't really worth covering anymore. We'll keep an eye on it for you, and that's what we do. As far as the big show is concerned, we got a whole lot to deal with, specifically a couple of weeks. You know, we've covered a couple of subjects on the past 2 cross flags, and of course this one as well. But man, we got a lot of news that we're going to be getting into from all of the series that we cover. So you're going to have to make sure that you tune in this Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. Always feel free to leave comments down below, subscribe down below. Love to hear what you have to say, even if we can't do it necessarily face-to-face or ear-to-ear. We love to get your comments. And if you happen to have the opportunity to catch us on CRN Live on Saturday, we always have the live chat going on the side, so you can be a part of the show that way as well. So we thank you for subscribing down below. We thank you for commenting down below. We'll talk to you again on Saturday morning. Our thanks once again to producer John, producer Molly for getting us taken care of on both CRN Live on YouTube and Jocks FM TV on YouTube. We thank them both. My thanks for Matt Nicholson. And you guys, we thank you for your patience, considering it has been an interesting couple of weeks for the two of us. We'll have stories from Talladega and Barber as well this Saturday morning. Don't forget about it, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. Until then, I'm Steve West. Thank you for checking us out on this edition of Crossed Flags.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.